Hey everyone, uh, we're back with week two, lesson two, and that is on processed foods, GMOs, and non-organics. So we're going to run through each of these topics kind of briefly, but thoroughly at the same time. Give some good information and what you can do. That most importantly, what you can do to protect yourself, your family, your kids, and to make sure you're getting the highest quality food that's going to help you be healthy rather than take from your health. So, what is a processed food and why is it so bad for me? And the answer simply is three things: chemicals, chemicals, and chemicals. So, there are over 50,000 chemicals registered with the EPA now that did not exist 2 generations ago. And it's actually quite easy to create a chemical and get it to be passed by the EPA as generally regarded as safe or GRAS without any kind of studies or long-term, following people around and see what it really does. So some of the most problematic chemicals in processed foods, and the truth is that almost all processed food has these things in it. So when we're talking about processed food, we're talking about anything that comes in a box, a bag, a can, or a bottle that has an ingredients list. In some way, shape, or form, these things have been processed. Now, not every processed food is bad for us, and there is certainly a gradation or a scale from the worst to the least harmful. But the vast majority of processed foods that are eaten in our culture these days have these things in it. So we're talking about high fructose corn syrup, one of the most damaging ingredients that is in the food supply, and it's ubiquitous, meaning it is almost everywhere. You can find high fructose corn syrup added to sauces, salad dressings, soups, all kinds of stuff. And it is a particularly pernicious sugar that causes all of the difficulties and problems that sugar cause, but much more quickly and much more intensely. So things like weight gain and hormone issues and diabetes and heart disease and cancers and all these things are stimulated and made worse by the consumption of high fructose corn syrup, and particularly the regular and constant consumption, which is what occurs if you eat a lot of processed food, and particularly with this one, drink a lot of processed drinks, sodas, juices, energy drinks, coffee drinks, these kind of things. Another one is genetically modified organisms, or GMOs. We're going to cover that as its own topic next, so we'll save that one. But most processed food has GMOs in it, typically in the form of the oils, so soybeans, cottonseed, canola, corn, those type of things. Also, the corn syrup, the high fructose corn syrup, is typically genetically modified also. Preservatives, which are chemicals that are designed to slow or stop the normal biologic breakdown of the food, which is a big part of how our body integrates it, is that normal breakdown process. Also, these chemicals interrupt our own body's process of breakdown and repair because now we're ingesting them. Flavor additives. Now, these are the things that make processed foods taste the way they do. And a lot of times, flavor additives and some preservatives, but flavor additives don't have to be listed on the label. And that's because you only have to list things on an ingredients label if there's a certain weight or volume measure of that chemical or that item. And flavor additives are such powerful chemicals that very, very little amounts have to be added to the foods to have profound effects. So you probably have heard sort of the concept or had the experience yourself of something like a Doritos or like a cheese flavored chips or whatever. And people talk about, oh, you can't just eat one, right? You eat one and then you got to eat another and another and another. So here's why that happens. The flavor additives, there are chemicals that basically cause a neural reaction in the interaction between your taste buds and your brain. Because really you taste everything in your brain because that's where it's processed. Now, flavor additives, yes, cause us to experience particular flavors, but they're also designed in a very particular, specific way that hyperactivates neurons in our brain, excites them. And they're called excitotoxins because in many cases that excitation continues until that brain cell is damaged or killed. And But what happens is because of the way they excite our brain reacts to these chemicals the same as it does for drugs, like street drugs, like cocaine, heroin, these very highly addictive, injurious drugs. And so what happens, we go through that same cycle. First, we ingest the chemical and we get a high from it. And we might not experience the high like, as extreme as with like a drug, but we do experience it to some degree. And then what happens is like with other drugs, we once the chemical is gone from our system, we crash. And these chemicals don't last for hours and hours like some more powerful drugs do. They're designed to last just for moments. And then we have kind of this like empty feeling inside, is how it's often described. And we know, not typically with our conscious mind, but sort of subconsciously, that we had this good feeling, it's gone. This chemical, this thing we ate, we don't think of maybe the chemical, but this chip or this cookie or cracker we ate gave us that good feeling. So now I feel empty, at a loss. If I eat another one of those things, I'll get that good feeling again. So it starts this addictive cycle where we want more and more and more to continue to get that high. The design is so that we eat and buy more and more of the stuff. Like who cares that it's killing our brain, right? It's all about the bottom line. Also, colorings and food dyes, many of those are found to be harmful to our system, and they're put in there, for appearance, so that the processed food looks a certain way or doesn't look a certain way, because some things look pretty weird once they're processed, and then they have to dye them to make them look how we might expect them to be. So that's processed foods and sort of the short story of why they're so bad for me. Now, I said we get to GMOs on their own. So GMOs, and my question that I get a lot is, haven't we been genetically modifying food for as long as there has been farming? So the answer to that is yes and no. So genetically modifying in terms of what people have done with crossbreeding and hybriding in farming and agriculture for thousands of years, that is not the same thing as the GMO process that's going on now, not in any way. That process was a matter of taking pollens from different plants and mixing them, hybriding. This tomato, does well in cold weather, and this tomato is big and very red, and we want a big and very red tomato to grow in cold weather. If we crossbreed those plants, maybe we'll get the best of both worlds. That's how it was done. Now what's going on is in laboratories, they're taking the genetic material of the different plants typically and modifying them by adding viruses, by adding other partial proteins, by adding chemicals so that they have particular properties like Roundup Ready soybeans. So Roundup Ready soybeans basically are made so that the farmer can dump as much Roundup, which is glyphosate, which we will also talk about in a minute, on the crop as they want. They can just blanket spray as much as they want because the soybean is designed not to die from this herbicide. Whereas everything else, all the other weeds and anything else growing in the field will get wiped out. The soybean has something in it that will protect it from the glyphosate. There's also other ones, Bt toxin corn, which actually produces an insecticide in the corn itself. So when the bugs come and try to eat it, they die. And the way they die is their digestive system gets holes poked in it, and then they die that way. So that's what GMOs are now. And so it's very different. I just want to clear that up. And so here are some of the things when they've done animal studies, because the study on humans is actually happening now by putting it into the food supply. But so when scientists have studied animals, cows, pigs, animals that are relatively similar to us in the way our body works, these are the things they found. They found huge increases in the rates of cancer, huge increases in reproductive problems, and huge increases in autoimmune disease caused by the leaky gut. Now, if you remember a minute ago, I was saying about the Bt toxin corn, and the way that works is that the toxin that the corn now makes, because it's been genetically modified, pokes holes in the intestines of the insects to kill them. Now, when we eat that stuff, supposedly, the manufacturers, the chemical industries tell us that it doesn't do anything to humans. But what we're seeing is this huge increase in leaky gut and the associated problems with leaky gut, which are primarily going to be autoimmune disorders. So now here we are eating this genetically modified stuff, corn, which is in high fructose corn syrup, so it's in everything. And we're finding it's poking holes in our gut, which, surprise, surprise, because that's what it's designed to do in the insects, and it does the same thing in us. So these three things, cancer, reproductive problems, and autoimmune diseases, are some of the fastest growing problems, chronic illness and disease we see in our culture, in step with the introduction and the widespread use of GMOs. Now, one of the easiest ways to avoid GMOs is to avoid processed foods. You can get some GMO exposure from non-processed foods, but it's not very common to have that happen. So processed foods, GMOs, avoid them like they're poison, because they are. And then the fact about poisons, that brings us to the third topic in this course, in this lesson today. Non-organic versus organics. Is there even a question, right? So I didn't even want to ask it like, oh, which one's better? Because, a few generations ago, or not even that long, 20 to 30 years ago, you could get away with eating conventional food, washing it really well before you ate it, and not be exposing yourself to lethal, essentially, quantities of harmful chemicals. But these days, that's not really possible. When we talked about the GMO crops and how they're Roundup ready, so they can just dump millions of pounds of glyphosate on these crops. And glyphosate has been recognized by every major health agency globally as a carcinogenic or a cancer-causing agent, and banned in many countries worldwide. Not in this country. And you might have heard of Monsanto's Roundup. Well, that's glyphosate. So it leads to leaky gut big time, big time. It really destroys our gut mucosa and causes leaky gut, which a lot of researchers are considering that a lot of the food sensitivities that people deal with these days, gluten is a huge one, dairy is a huge one, are really as a result of the leaky gut caused in a lot of cases by the ingestion of glyphosate, because it's on so much of the fruits and vegetables and grains and everything, corn, all that stuff. It's neurotoxic, so it kills our brain. It's killing the bees, which is a huge issue, because if we have no bees, then we have no pollination and we have no food. And then what they're finding is that because so much is put on there, and it's always sort of manufactured in a way so it works, it's hard to get off the food, and it gets soaked into a lot of the vegetables and fruits. So just buying conventional and washing it at home isn't going to do the trick. So what do you do? And here are my suggestions. Buy everything organic. And it's sort of a blanket statement, and it's like, oh, why I got to buy everything organic? But that's what I do. And I figure information is power, and I've studied this stuff, and that's what I do. And it is more expensive. That's certainly people's first objection to it, or hard to find, but it's getting easier to find. So I'd say cost is the biggest thing. But you know what? I would rather spend a lot of money on food for me and my kids than on some of the other stuffs that I might spend that money on. Who knows what? You can take your pick. Technology items, clothes, whatever. I mean, we need those things, some of them, but not feeding ourselves and our family and our kids brain destroying, autoimmune and cancer causing toxins is a huge important thing. Another one is all of that stuff we just talked about, that goes into a lot of our skincare and household cleaning products. So use organic / chemical-free skincare, household cleaning products. We live in sort of this funny dual time, right? We're in the most toxic time in history, but we also have access to so much resource available online. You can find resources for either organic and chemical-free skincare and cleaning products, or like where to buy them, or you can find as many recipes as you can imagine to make that stuff yourself. And that's really the safest, because then you really know what's going in it. But we absorb all the chemicals we put on our skin. It's the largest organ. We breathe in those household cleaning products. So don't think, just because you spray it, you're not getting it on you. Buy from local producers who are organic or non-GMO, non-spray, because getting an organic certification is difficult and expensive if it's a small farm. So get to know them, find out what they do, go to the farm even. CSAs are great, but buy from the local producers. Grow your own food. Then you absolutely have total control and you know exactly what's going into it, what's going on it. And it's a great experience to really connect to the food chain, to the food supply. Kids love it. And it's a really actually, we'll likely talk about this in another section, but it's actually one of the great ways to get kids who maybe aren't so hot on eating a lot of vegetables and fruits to start doing that, because if they get involved in the process of actually producing, growing the food themselves, they love eating it. There's obviously life, circumstances. You don't maybe live somewhere where you have local producers. It's hard to get organics. Maybe the cost is prohibitive. There's an organization called the EWG, or the Environmental Working Group, and they put out this list on some regular basis. I don't know if it's yearly or less frequently, but it's their Dirty Dozen and their Clean 15. So check them out. You can search EWG or Environmental Working Group online. The Dirty Dozen and the Clean 15. So basically what they're telling you is the Dirty Dozen is the foods that you should never eat conventional or non-organic, because they are the dirtiest. And then there's a Clean 15, which if you have to choose, or if you can't find organic, these items are the ones that are the least damaging, the least harmful, the least covered in chemicals, and GMOs and all that things. So they're the safest to buy conventional. I still think buying all organic is your best bet, but if you have to make those choices, get some information. Check out the EWG, Dirty Dozen, and Clean 15. So hopefully this is helpful. Hopefully it's illuminating. It gave you some new information, some new insight. And really what I would suggest for homework is kind of the continuation of last lesson. So it's looking at the food in your household and really starting to look at how you can clear out the toxins out of your house in terms of your food and in terms of the body care and cleaning supplies. Start researching some other ways to do those things, and get online. Spend some time online researching local producers, local farms. Find out where you can go, farmers markets and so forth, because getting stuff locally is great. And look at what it takes to start a garden. People can grow vegetables on balconies and porches, yards. It doesn't matter. You can grow an inside and a window just to get the ball rolling. All right, you guys take care, and we'll see you on the next lesson.